So the things that you believe about yourself and about the world are the things that are going to shape whether or not you're able to be successful in life or not. So I just got a comment on my financial freedom video where I talked a little bit about Dave Ramsey's baby steps and the book Die With Zero and how important it is to actually be intentional with your money. You know, things that you would think are fairly common sense. I immediately got a comment that essentially the gist was, don't you understand the world and how bad things are? And most people are working 3 jobs and are barely able to make ends meet and still can't afford necessities, much less saving or investing. And what's funny is that like one of the shorts that I cut out of the video, one of the short form videos, was literally just the 15 seconds of the video where I say, create a freaking budget, because a freaking budget is what's going to allow you to, 1, better afford the necessities in life, but 2, then enable you to start actually getting after the things that are your priorities because you're conscious of and intentional about the money that you're spending. Same thing applies to being conscious of and intentional about investing for the future so that you'll actually be able to take advantage of compound interest, which most of the population does not. Most people do not do this, which is why most people are not financially free. It's that simple. And what this comment really represented, admit, initially I was just kind of like ticked off. Like I was like, come on. Like it's a really negative attitude, really negative worldview is just kind of dragging it down. And I immediately did that thing of like, just delete, whatever. I don't want that negativity in the comment section, which I immediately regretted because then I was like, I should make a video about it so that I could actually like put it right here, because I think it's so important because we all know people like that. We all know, and this is one part of it, of like a generational woe is me attitude, which I feel like happens at every single generation. But right now it's all like, well, the millennials and Gen Z have it way harder than the boomers had it. It was so easy to buy a house back then because like income to housing ratios were way more advantageous back then, way more difficult now. Hyperinflation recently has been really difficult. You know, millennials grew up in the housing crisis. Like there's a million things that, by the way, are true, right? Like these difficulties, these challenges that make financial freedom more difficult for current generations, they are real. They are real, true challenges. But what doesn't change is the principles and beliefs that help you overcome them. So like in the same, today, you know what it's a good idea to do with your money? A budget. Like a budget is going to help you even more so with the financial challenges of today than you would have needed to 10 and 20 and 30 and 40 years ago. And that's why it cracks me up, and also it breaks my heart, the response that's just like, well, you're wrong because things are really bad. Well, you're wrong about these financial principles because of how bad it is financially right now. No, the financial principles remain the same and are that much more important. And this is where I think a lot of the criticism of Dave Ramsey and Dave Ramsey's baby steps, I understand where they're coming from, but why I don't agree with them. Because like a big one is like $1,000. Like, you know, the first baby step of emergency fund hasn't changed in 3 decades of Dave Ramsey, which is true. But if you listen to him and isn't the principle that it's a fully funded emergency fund that's going to cover any emergency that comes up, it's the principle of just having a little bit of discipline to take a very first baby step to save and be intentional with your money. And that's that tiny little baby emergency fund. In the same way, like Dave Ramsey recommends a 15-year fixed rate mortgage. And that is so much more difficult to afford now than it was 10, than it was 20 years ago. But if you do that, you're going to be way better off financially long term. It doesn't make it more challenging, but it means the principle of keeping your housing costs low remains. It's just as important. And this is the problem, because this is where we just get into a financial F-it mentality. And I see it all the time, and it just makes me so sad. It's because things are bad, because of all these external factors that I can't control. Why bother? Why bother being intentional with my money? And the reason why you should bother, it is the difference between freedom and financial servitude. Like, I'm going to say it again. The borrower is slave to the lender. You know, I'm going to get nerdy for a second. There's an old poem by Rudyard Kipling. It's called "The Gods of the Copybook Heading," and it's him like writing about the cultural decline of the British Empire. It's essentially the idea that the British we're worshiping the gods of the marketplace, like whatever was modern and fashionable at the time, at the expense of traditional moral values. The copybook headings, these little sayings that used to be at the top of textbooks for young British kids when they were going through school. And these copybook headings, it'd be sort of like a stitch in 9 saves time, honesty is the best policy, like a lot of these classic sayings that are fundamental moral principles that are true, but that, you know, we try to instill in young audiences. And I love there's one line in this poem where, and it's perfectly illustrative of how we're always looking for a shortcut or someone else to blame or some external factor as the reason that we can't succeed or that we can't make a difference. The burnt fool's bandaged finger goes wobbling back to the fire. And he's describing exactly that, our human nature, our foolish human nature, to just assume that we can do whatever we want, and we can ignore long-time traditional fundamental principles like saving your money and investing, and we can just ignore those because it's different for us. We're different. We are the special, dare I say, snowflakes. All right, going far enough there. That's getting this rant. I'm going to be talking a lot more about financial freedom on this channel because it's so important. Because, listen, that's what this channel is about. It's about discovering your own values and priorities, being clear on those so that you can live a life that's in alignment with that. And if that sounds like the kind of thing that you're interested in, like this video, subscribe, and then you'll see a link to my Substack newsletter. It's the first link in the description below. I'd love for you to join me, but until next time, may the force be with you always. All right, now I got to get back from my lunch break.